All right, thanks for making the Locked On Ole Miss podcast your first listen every day. We are free and available on all platforms, including YouTube. So do us a favor, subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the bell for notifications, and of course, upvote the video itself. We would appreciate it greatly. I am here with Tom Vanderford. He's going to talk all about Ole Miss sports and realignment. We're going to talk realignment today, I think, because I seemingly always talk realignment. But how you doing, Tom?
I'm doing great, man. I'm doing great. Glad to be here.
Yeah, me too. By the way, I went to the doctor today and got not an all clear, but as good as you can get, a diagnosis, and the MRI showed my tumor was blackening out, which he said that meant was dying. So that is
Wonderful.
that is a good thing for me because I was actually worried about the radiation back in the day. But today was a pretty good day. We're going to do a celebratory dinner at Rodizio's on Saturday, and we're going to go watch a little Thor on Sunday. That's our plan.
That sounds wonderful. Well, mine's shrinking. I can tell it's shrinking, so because of the kind of cancer I have. So that's good news.
Okay.
And we will just keep on the track. I get my first scan on the 27th of July, and we'll just go from there.
Okay, perfect. Awesome. Definitely, we're thinking all about you and everything. But I hope you get well soon. But you're going to be here regardless, all through the fall. We talked about it. Derek Vandegrift is going to join us during college football season as our college betting analyst. And we're going to find different roles for different people to do. We're going to have a couple of interns coming on board. One from England before the World Cup. It's going to be fantastic. It's going to be a lot. We're going to have a lot of fun. And it's full speed ahead here at Locked On Ole Miss, I think.
That sounds wonderful.
So, you don't think we're out of it for Jaden Rashada. I think we are out of it for Jaden Rashada because I don't think we can touch that money that he got. But Marcel Reed, to me, is a heck of a quarterback, and he is somebody that can spend the next 2 years developing, or the year after he gets here developing behind a Jackson Dart or a Luke Altmaier, whoever wins that job, and be ready to take over after he leaves. And he'll be perfectly fine. That's just my opinion on that.
I think any time that your plan C is a 4-star All-American type quarterback, that you're in good hands when it comes to recruiting.
Yes, whenever let's see, Marcel Reed actually outperformed Nico Imaleva at the Nashville Elite 11. Because Nico Imaleva has a name, he made it to the finals, and Marcel Reed did not. But that doesn't change the performance that Marcel had. He had a really good day. I think he's hurt a little bit by NBA running a 1994 like Auburn offense. I mean, it's very antiquated. A lot of under center, and then you've got this rocket ship at quarterback that could make you so dangerous, and you just don't use him. It's bizarre, but it's also high school football, I guess. All right, the internet kind of went out there for a second, but Tom is back now. We were talking about Marcel Reed, and I don't know, the surprise that could be him. I had somebody tell me he was a Charlie Ward type quarterback when I was comparing him to an RG3 type, and I'm interested to see exactly how this would look. I think a lot of that has to do with that early 90s offense that NBA runs.
That's a good assumption. That's a good assertion. I think that Reed will be used in our system. I think he's a good fit. I think he's a really good fit. He's athletic. I would take either one of those guys, RG3 or Ward as well. They were great college quarterbacks, and that's what we need. We need a great college quarterback in our system. Doesn't necessarily have to be a first-round draft pick. Has to be good in our system. And I think what Lane's going to be more comfortable with now that we've got some tight end help is going back to the tight end, like you were saying, go back to the slot, go back to that running game. Kind of more like he did when he was in Alabama and he had O.J. Howard and that whole bunch. I think we're going to be doing pretty good there, but. A segue into realignment is it's exciting what's happening out there. And I'm enjoying it, and it's kind of sad because you see the folks getting left out. You know, you saw, or at least you heard that Oregon and Washington tried to talk to the B1G, and they're like, "No, man, we're done for now." I think the B1G is just waiting on a yes or no from Notre Dame, I imagine. I think the SEC would take Notre Dame in a heartbeat, but I don't think Notre Dame wants any part of the SEC.
Really, because the SEC and the fan bases of the SEC teams have 50 years of conditioning not to like Notre Dame. And you have to think that these leaders in the conference are as part of that conditioning too. So I just don't see Notre Dame as an SEC option.
I really don't. I really don't. I think it's like you said. I see that conditioning as well. You know, that nobody in the SEC likes Notre Dame. There's Notre Dame's kind of like the Cowboys. You either love them or you hate them. You know, and it's the same way. I've got a bunch of Notre Dame. I got some Golden Domers in my family, and they just think the sun rises and sets with Notre Dame. But the bottom line is Notre Dame's academic standards are so high that I just don't think that they could compete in the SEC week in, week out. Because, you know, look at Vandy. Vandy has those kind of expectations. Now, Notre Dame gets the better athlete, don't get me wrong. But what I'm basically trying to say is that Notre Dame, they're more of a Big Ten type team anyway, usually, and they don't have the overall speed and depth that you're going to get in the SEC. It's two totally different football mindsets. You know, the 3 yards in the cloud of dust or whatever versus the wide openness that we have in the SEC with the super fast defenses. Now Notre Dame has, you know, their first team's probably as good as most SEC teams, but I don't know about their depth factor. You know, that's the same problem we had for years. You know, even back in the 80s and the 90s, we had some pretty good players on our first team, but we didn't have that quality depth that some of the other schools had. So I think that if they're smart, if Notre Dame's smart, they'll stay in the ACC, because I think we're gonna cherry pick some teams out of the ACC and the SEC. I really do.
Yeah,
I think
you hear all the time the argument the SEC doesn't have rigorous academic institutions, and the Big Ten has all these academics and all of that. That might have been true in 1992 when South Carolina and Arkansas came in, and the only really good, prestigious school that we had was Vanderbilt. But since then, Florida's come on. Georgia's come on. We've added Texas A&M. Oklahoma and Texas are going to fit that. It's not like if Virginia and North Carolina come into the league, they're coming into some foreign country. There's plenty of good academic institutions now in the SEC as well. That's also true. Just some really good football teams as well.
That's true. There are some really good academic institutions, and you just hit the nail on the head. A lot of people are looking at FSU and Miami, and I'm looking at Virginia and North Carolina. I really think that Virginia and North Carolina, if the trigger's pulled, those will be two of the schools. I just don't see Florida State and Miami leaving the friendly confines of the ACC. Nor do I see Notre Dame. I mean, if they're smart, you know, what's your clearest path to a national championship? Is it in the B1G, or is it in the ACC or the SEC?
Well, it's not in the ACC because they haven't done it in the last 20 years. Maybe the Big Ten. The SEC, they absolutely would be killed. But I saw a graphic the other day to where Notre Dame was listed amongst 18 schools that have never won a BCS or a New Year's Six bowl game. The only difference is Notre Dame has been there 8 times. They're 0-8 in those games, including last year when they had a 2-touchdown lead on Oklahoma State, and they just came back and won the game anyway. So,
yeah, they're media darlings.
Yeah, it's more of a situation where they didn't deserve to be there in the first place.
Exactly.
And
that's, you know, that's what my Notre Dame fan friends say, and my family. They're like, well, we need to go to a big, tough conference. and win, or we're never going to be legitimate. And it's true. It's true. And they, like you said, they go to a New Year's Six game, they go to a BCS game, they get smoked like a cheap cigar. And, they are just in that unique position. They're the only team in the country that could play 8 patsies and 3 decent teams and end up in a New Year's Six bowl. It's just, once again, like you were saying with the SEC bias, it just, Notre Dame just really gets on my nerves how they can just cakewalk into a top 4 team without playing anybody much.
Yeah, we were Cincinnati beating them away last year from them ending up in the playoff again and getting smoked by Alabama or Georgia. I just don't see. They are a brand. They do bring things for you. They will help the Big Ten greatly, probably more than the SEC would be helped by them. I think Virginia and North Carolina are perfect fits for the Southeastern Conference. I think Florida State and Clemson, if they're what's been rumored is true with them being a come along, I think that'll work as well. In a 20-team SEC, you could have an 8-team quarterfinal playoff into the SEC championship game, into a national championship game, add 1 game to the schedule, and I think everybody would watch that.
That would be perfect with those 4. Then you feel sorry for the ACC and wonder who they're going to backfill with. They'll probably backfill with Charlotte and some other schools.
Well, the thing is, they don't really need to backfill because they have 15 teams. So if they lost 4, and let's say Notre Dame went to the Big Ten, they have a 10-team conference.
Yeah, so they're still good. You're right.
Yeah, they're still good to go, and they could probably add a couple of a couple of teams maybe that would pop up. Maybe they would get somebody like West Virginia to go with Pitt. Maybe there would be like a team swap if they picked up somebody that was in the Big Ten realm. But I think the ACC would be fine. But it'd be like Miami, Virginia Tech. It'd be the Big East, essentially, is what it would be.
Yeah, and you look at them, you look at the Big 12 or whatever it's being called in the future, and you don't see a path to I don't see a path to a national championship. I look at these super conferences and I see that's where the money's gonna be made in the future.
Are you a soccer guy at all?
I like soccer. I like it more now than I used to.
The World Cup? Yeah, the World Cup,
yeah.
And you feel familiar how it's seated? Well, back in the day, Australia was in Oceania, and they always had to play a playoff to get in the World Cup. And it was extremely hard, and they decided that they needed to move regions. See, this happens in other sports besides college football. So they moved over into Asia with those guys, and they've made every World Cup since then after not going for like 50 years before. And the successful teams is like Europe and South America, where 6 teams and 15 teams get into the World Cup. So you're not having to peak twice, is I guess what I'm saying. You right. can kind of qualify in 8th position and just make a run in the tournament and do all right. And it's just easier whenever you have help. And I think the ACC, I think the SEC, I think the Big 12 will see that. And I think that's the reason the Pac-12 is going to go away. I think those 4 corner schools are going to kind of matriculate to the Big 12. I don't know if Oregon and Washington are. I think if the SEC moves on those 4 schools from the ACC, you will see the Big 10 take those 2 Pac-12 schools. Plus maybe Stanford if they get a no from Notre Dame.
Oh, yeah, Stanford would be good for the B1G as well.
Mm-hmm.
That would be good. But I just hate seeing, I'm an old man. I remember the Pac-8, and
they're almost there.
There's
now.
Been so much change. Oh, yeah. Yeah, I can remember when it was a big deal when they let Arizona and Arizona State in and made the Pac-10.
Yeah.
So I've been around a couple of days, but college football is constantly evolving, and the big thing is it's all about money.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like with this NIL thing, it's not so much. It's just like Jimmy Johnson used to say. it's not so much the X's and O's as it's the Jimmies and the Joes. And, that's what Lane is trying to do at Ole Miss. He's trying to, within NIL, do the best job he can to stack his roster. So getting back to what you said, you're probably correct. Why spend the money on Rashada when you've got Marcel, and you can go out and you can get some defensive linemen, or you can get some backs, or whatever the case may be, with that same NIL money. Because it's not happening now unless it's self-imposed. Some schools only have only have a certain amount of money they can spend on NIL, or however that works. But Ole Miss doesn't need to get in the arms race with the Miamis or the Texases or the Texas A&Ms of the world. They just don't. So, and for a little bit of that, I see Alabama not getting into a big arms race either.
Yeah.
They're stepping back and getting, they're not getting into the big arms race either. So I think you're going to see different ways of doing things from the Miami high dollar and the A&M and Texas high dollars to people like Ole Miss and Bama that are kind of middle of the road. And then you're going to see the schools that just can't really afford NIL. You're not going to see a whole lot of NIL deals with Southern Miss or South Alabama, so on and so forth. So you're kind of somewhere in there. But
everybody says they're hot takes about NIL, and there's hot takes about the transfer portal, and there's hot takes about realignment, about how your school is not going to be able to compete anymore and it's not going to mean anything. There's only 4 or 5 schools right now that's competing. The way it was, there were 5 schools. I think there's 6 or 7 that's made the playoffs since 2014.
Yeah.
So I think people need to realize and just root for their team no matter what it was. Southern Miss is over the moon about being in the Sun Belt Conference. They are so happy about having regional rivalries and doing all that stuff. They don't care about this realignment and how it's going to affect them. Ole Miss shouldn't care about how this is going to affect them. If Ole Miss never wins a football national championship, you know what changes? Nothing. Ole Miss was struggling before this. Yeah.
Exactly.
If 12 or 16 teams get access to the playoff pool, that's a good advancement for college football. If it's 24, even better. But, realignment and the hot takes that come along with it, basically do not trust people with sources. Trust but verify, and wait for somebody to confirm it, because everybody comes in with stuff and you don't know whether or not it's made up, if the source doesn't know what he's talking about or anything like that. It's going to be interesting.
That's why I love the opinion show. We just throw our opinions out there. Yeah, I don't have a source. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
And that's what I like about it.
Perspectives and commentary, man. Perspectives
Yes, sir.
and commentary. Anyway, Tom, thank you for coming on the show. We will catch you next week. Hope you're doing well, bud.
Yep. You hang in there, buddy, and hotty toddy.
Hotty toddy.